Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are jumping right into the pretty wild world of global trade. Things are chaotic. Old friendships are crumbling, new deals are popping up everywhere you look, and it is all happening fast. And really, this right here, this is a tale of two very different deals. It kind of tells the whole story. You've got the EU making a huge new deal with the Mercosur bloc and South America. That's a big win. But at the same time, it's a long-standing deal with the US totally falling apart. This is the new normal, constant change, and you never know who's going to be friends with whom tomorrow. So you gotta ask, what is going on here? Why all the drama? Well, the analysis we're digging into today points to one massive reason. The old rules just don't apply anymore. Think about it. The World Trade Organization, the WTO, it used to be the referee for global trade. Now, the source argues, it's pretty much powerless. And that has left this huge vacuum, a total free-for-all where everyone is making up their own rules. And in this new, let's call it the Wild West of trade, it really is every country for itself. Look at the EU. They're not sitting still. They're making moves with South America, and they're this close to a huge deal with India. But then you've got the US playing hardball, threatening new tariffs, which pretty much force the EU to hit pause on their deal. It's like watching a set of dominoes fall, and every single one is pushed by pure self-interest. Okay, but why is all of this happening right now? What's the driving force? Well, the source material offers up this really clever metaphor that, honestly, just perfectly explains the instability we're seeing everywhere. It's called the crowd tiptoe effect. And it's a great visual. Imagine you're at a parade, right? And you're trying to see over the person in front of you. So what do? You stand on your tiptoes. Just for a second, you get a better view. But then the person behind you can't see, so they go on their tiptoes. And pretty soon, the entire crowd is standing on tiptoes. Everyone's off balance, everyone's uncomfortable. And guess what? No one has a better view than when they started. It's a lose-lose. And that is exactly what this analysis argues happened with global trade. The US, with its America First policy, was the first one to stand on its tiptoes by slapping on tariffs. This basically forced everyone else, the EU, China, India, to do the same thing just to keep up. They had to make their own deals, their own tariffs, and the result? The whole system is now way more unstable, and nobody's really better off. Now, it's really important to note that the source is super clear on this point. This whole thing didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It all started with a diagnosis of a real, legitimate problem, even if the solution, as we'll see, was maybe not the right one. For example, the analysis points out that complaints about Europe may be relying a little too much on the US, or about its own inefficiencies. Well, they're not just talk. This quote right here gets pretty blunt about it. The argument is that there's a kernel of truth to the criticism. And to really drive this point home, the author tells this personal story. They were on a 2-week trip to Europe that ended up lasting 17 days. Why? Because a couple of inches of snow, literally just a couple of inches, completely shut down major airports in Copenhagen, Frankfurt, and Amsterdam. The author contrasts this with the US, where, let's be honest, that kind of thing would be almost unthinkable. It's a small story, but it's meant to illustrate a bigger point about infrastructure and preparedness. So this is the core argument being made here. It's a really important distinction. The source says the grievance, the complaint that Europe was too dependent and maybe not keeping its own house in order, that part was valid. There was a real problem to solve. But the solution that was chosen, according to this analysis, that's where things went wrong. Okay, so if the old system is toast, who's actually winning in all this chaos? Because in this new, messy world, some countries aren't just getting by, they're absolutely thriving. And according to this analysis, the number one winner, hands down, is China. Look at this. They've grown their trade surplus with the rest of the world to an incredible $1.2 trillion. That is a staggering amount of money, and it really just screams volumes about where China's economic power is right now. But it's not all smooth sailing. The source points out a couple of big catches. For one, China's GDP growth has actually stalled out of it. And maybe more importantly, its really aggressive, peaceful rise strategy, well, it's creating a serious trust issue. It seems the more powerful China gets, the more nervous other countries become. And then there's a bit of a surprise winner here, India. They're playing their cards incredibly well. They're on the verge of that massive deal with the EU, they've built new alliances in the Middle East, and they're pushing their own advanced digital payment system on the world stage. And get this, they've also quietly slapped a 30% tariff on US goods. It's a clear signal that India is no longer waiting for permission. They're playing their own game now. So where does this all leave us? What's the final verdict on this great unraveling, especially for the country that, according to this analysis, kicked the whole thing off? Well, the source looks at the results back home in the United States. The new policies led to the deportation of more than 900,000 immigrants. And at the exact same time, you had these huge tariffs being put on guides, some as high as 50%. The idea, of course, was that this would protect American industry and American jobs. So, did it work? Well, the author states that a full year into these policies, those promised benefits just didn't show up for the average American. The source says that wages stayed low and unemployment was still high. So it seems that flawed solution, well, it just didn't deliver the goods. So what are we left with? What's the big takeaway here? Okay, first, the old predictable world of global trade, it's gone. We're now in that tiptoe effect world where everyone's looking out for themselves, which just makes everything more shaky for everyone. Second, in all this chaos, you've got new powers like China and India who are figuring out how to win, and they're not asking for permission anymore. And all of this brings us to the source's final, pretty provocative question. By trying so hard to put America first, are these policies actually causing it to fall behind in the New World Order that it, in many ways, helped create?